Welcome to the first lesson of SmartKnitter, Knit Instructions Level 2. Today we will focus on the translation of knitting machine codes. Let's take a look at a front panel Smart Graph file. This style is set to have neck bottom cast off, shoulder parts knitted and cast off independently. In the front panel, pointelles and a cable are added on a 3-color striped base. After finishing the pattern, we can go to Setup Feeders. Feeder with royal blue color, with zone 16 top turquoise color, is set to PP thread, drawn thread at row 1 using feeder number 1. Feeder in gray color with zone 1 top red color and zone 3 top yellow color are the main color of the bodice and sweep. They are dragged to the same row at 3, indicating the use of same feeder number 3. Feeder in gray color with zone 2 top green color is the right shoulder after casting off the neck bottom. It is set to feeder number 4. Right-click on the feeder to set this to partial knit feeder. Set the end to right. Feeders on row 5 and 6 are the striped colors of the bodice. Feeders with zone 7 and zone 22 are the ravel yarn feeders. They are dragged to the same row at 7, indicating the use of same feeder number 7. Set it as RY, Ravel yarn here. Feeder with color 255 in zone 0 is the elastics for setup. This feeder is added automatically upon translation. It is not shown in the Smart Graph module. Feeder for elastic must be set to EY, elastic yarn, here. After setting all the feeders, click the check mark to confirm and save the setup. Click Translate to Knitting Machine Code after entering the feeders setup page. Check whether the correct machine type and model are selected. Translation setting can be set according to the panel and method needed. First, for Bind Off option, we can choose Thread Up when binding off over a certain number of stitches, and also when to press off the thread up stitch here. You can choose the method of bind off here as well. For narrowing options, you can select if automatic adjustments are allowed here, in order to maintain the consistency of stripes. Narrow as is, option is selected for striped styles. How the narrowing is done, continuously or alternatively. Extra option, like skipping stitches inside or outside the narrow mark, are available as well. Again, in order to maintain the consistency of stripes, skipping stitches inside the narrowing marks are usually selected for better result. As for cables, we can choose to loosen the cable on the front, back, or both sides of the cable for easier knitting. For knot option, we can choose if the striped yarns are knitting directly or secured by tucking or knitting before the first row. Here, for striped styles, select Do not lock yarn with transfer in body. If lock ravel yarn, uses transfer to lock yarn. Here, choose Use takedown comb if your machine is equipped with it. You can set the maximum number of yarns to be brought into the knitting area at one time here, and how the feeders are brought out of the knitting area when not in use. You can also set how the ravel yarn is knitted before bringing in the body yarns. Here, the usual method for clamp and cutters is method 1. For partial knitting, we can click to select, if possible, do ravel courses and cast off first for better neckline finish. After selecting the translation settings, click Apply to save the settings. The translation settings are saved with the Smart Graph file. There is no need to reset it again when redoing the translations later on. Click Translate. In the Knitting Machine Code page, you can see the knitting movements on the left and function lines on the right. If anything from the function lines are needed to amend, it is recommended to go back to SmartGraph before translation for editing. This is to make sure all the amendments are saved in the SmartGraph and would not be overwritten when retranslating the file into machine code. You can press F12 on the keyboard to quickly toggle between the SmartGraph module and machine code page. You can change the tension number manually here. Dynamic stitch tension setting is only available on imported machines, Stoll and Shima Seiki. You can fill in color number above 65 to turn on this option. After translation, the feeders will kick back like during partial knitting to perform different tensions on the same course. The roller number controls the force of the roller, which can be set manually here as well. The speed number controls the knitting speed, which can be set manually here as well. Usually, the roller and tension numbers will be set to the same number for convenience. Racking direction and distance can be changed here. Needle arrangement, as in interlock or rib gating, is displayed here. This line controls if presser is employed during knitting or not. If filled with color 1, it means presser is used during both knitting and transfer. If filled with color 2, it means presser is used during knitting only. If filled with color 3, it means presser is used during transfer only. If you want to narrow as drawn in SmartGraph, fill in color 1 in this column. This works in particular if you want to set the overall narrowing to either narrow only at start or finish of the knitting row, but some parts are omitted and narrow as is. Here you can fill in color 1 to set the courses knitted in single system of the knitting cam. Usually it is set for sweeps only. This column indicates the page of the feeder setup being used during knitting. By default, Chinese machine and Stoll machine use page 1 on the yarn feeder setup page, while Shimaseki uses page 1 for sweep and page 2 for body. We can change pages used here, indicating the page with the color. This column controls if the rollers are opened or closed. Simply add color 1 to the courses to indicate rollers to be opened. It is particularly important for partial knitting to prevent excess pulling on the fabric edge and cause breakage. The roller control is applicable to Shimaseki and Stoll machines only. For Chinese machines, it is not necessary. The next column is controlling the repeats. The number of courses for repeat must be an even number and also continuous. The color used to fill this column is the repeat number. This column is for Shimaseki leading stitch number. You can use colors 1 to 7 to indicate the tension number. If there are knit and transfer, you can use double digits 11 to 17, 21 to 27, 31 to 37, 41 to 47, 57 to 57, 61 to 67, 71 to 77 as indicators. The first digit indicates the Shimaseki leading stitch number, and the second digit indicates the knitting tension number. The next two columns control if the panel has package group used. You can add the package group number and course numbers here. For example, if your package group 190 contains 2 courses as a repeat, you should fill in 190 on the left column and repeating color 1 and 2 alternatively on the right column. This column controls if the yarn will automatically get secured at edge, either by knitting, transfer, or tuck. Before entering the knitting area, for example, you might not want that on the slitted portion. You can fill in color 1 to turn off the knotting at edge function. FO is feeder order. It indicates which set of feeder order is used on this row. NP is no partial knitting adjustment. If one is marked, it cancels auto-adjust partial knit direction and tuck stitch. TS is tuck and sink. If one is marked, it adds tuck line to sink knit stitch. The final column controls if the panel is knitted in seamless garment, Tianyi method. This concludes all the function lines and their uses. Press F12 to enter the knitting machine code page. You can see before securing the body yarn, we will knit 2 revolutions of interlock stitches. Feeders 1, 3, 6, 4, 5 are brought in, using the Ravel yarn feeder 7 to secure the said feeders, then are brought outside the knitting area again. Feeder 4 is then carried to the right side for partial knitting of the shoulder and neckline later on. After casting on, the Ravel yarn interlock stitch courses are set to have repeat 1. The number of repeats can be set on the knitting machine after importing the machine code. Different machine has different requirement on how many ravel yarn courses are needed. After ravel yarn knitting, the stitches are transferred to 1x1 ribs. Then 1 row of 1x1 ribs is knitted with the Ravel yarn feeder 7, followed by 1 row of 1x1 back stitches. Feeder 7 is then brought outside the knitting area, and feeder 1, the drawn thread feeder, is brought in to knit 1 revolution of 1x1 back stitches. It is then brought to the default position as it is not longer required. Then, body yarn feeder 3 is brought in and start the casting on. You can see the clamp and scissors action here. Clamp 1 and 2 release the yarns, meaning they both are opened. 1 row of 1x1 ribs is knitted, followed by 1 revolution of 1x1 tubular stitches. The sweep can then be knitted with 1x1 ribs. Here you can see the speed and roller number are both set to 6 at the sweep. At the last course of the sweep, the tension number is changed to 7 for easier adjustment on the machine. Usually the last row is looser than the sweep to facilitate transfer to the body structure. Move on to knitting the body as it is striped. Feeders 3, 5, 6 are used alternatively. After knitting, feeder 3, 5, 6 are brought out. You can see the feeder movements here. We can see the stitch and machine movements for pointelles and cables here. At the sides of the cables, we have back stitches knitted. Pointelles are created by transferring the stitch to the adjacent back needle and then transfer straight back to front. The back needle bed, racking direction, and distance can be viewed here. For the cable, we can see the special technique to loosen the stitches before twisting by skipping the stitches on the other side of the cable. Before twisting, stitches on the back needle bed would be automatically transferred to the front to prevent breakage caused by racking. You can see the racking direction and the distance here to create a twist for cable. Here we can view that clamp once secure the yarns and then is cut by the scissors. The cable and pointelle structures are knitted repeatedly throughout the panel piece. Here we can see the binding off like what we have set up during translation. You can see the stitch hold and press off at the outer edge of the bind off here. 0 courses delay means the stitch hold will be pressed off immediately after bind off completed. We can see 1 stitch is skipped in the narrowing here, like we set up. You can see the narrowing of 3 stitches by transfer in 2 times. You can see the racking directions and distance here. Going to the neckline bottom. Cast off here with Revel yarn feeder 7. Feeder 7 comes from the left side. Secure the incoming yarn with transfer, then knit to cast off the neckline bottom. After that, feeder 7 is brought out of the knitting area again with intermittent tucks to secure the yarn end. After 4 revolutions, the tucked stitches from feeder 7 are pressed off. Feeder 4 is brought in to knit the right side of the shoulder part. After knitting, feeder 4 is brought away again. Feeder 3 is also brought out after knitting 2. As we selected knitting and cast off separately during translation. Feeder 7 is brought in again for the cast off by knitting. Secure the incoming yarn with transfer. Then knit to cast off the left side frist, then the right side. Feeder 7 and 4 are brought out and secure with clamp 2. The yarns are cut with scissors 2 after. You can see color 1 in the rightmost function line here, which indicates the panel code has ended. This marks the end of this tutorial. Thank you for watching.